today, which is an interview with Janet Jankura. Janelle Britton will be our moderator and speaker here today. With that, we're very excited about that conversation. And while that is going on, you can leave questions, you can leave comments in the chat box. Really, it's there as if we were in a room, and unfortunately we can't all be in the same room, but we are virtually, so please do leave lots of questions and comments, and feel free to kind of bounce back ideas as people, as Janet and Janelle are discussing certain topics that are out there. We also have a poll that we're going to kick off in just a moment. The poll will happen probably in about a minute or two. So we'll give everybody a moment to join. I still hear beeps coming. There's still some people joining. So for everyone who just joined, chat box, please put your name, industry, and anything about your board skills. What do you bring to boards? Okay, so I think everybody's got the chat box down. That seems to be everyone's been able to add lots of comments there. So I don't think I need to talk too much more about that. So everyone's clear. A quick overview of how it's going to work. As soon as the speakers are complete, we will be having breakout rooms, which means that you'll be in small teams of people who can discuss a certain topic. So we'll give you a topic of discussion, and you can then unmute, and we'll have a chairperson in each of those rooms who will be leading the call. Okay, so Janelle, I think we're going to get started with the poll. So for those of you who are able to see, we've got, I think there are two questions appearing. Let me just make sure. We see two questions. Wonderful. Okay, so let's see. Everybody pick up the poll. The first question is, have you ever served on a non-profit organization board? That's meant to be. Apologies, that's mine. And then the second one is, have you ever served on a corporate board? So these are board questions. Have you been on a non-profit board? Have you served on a corporate board? So far we've got about 80% of everybody on the call has been on a non-profit board, and about 50% have been on a corporate board. Wonderful, this is great. It's good just to get an idea of who's in the room. Janelle, yes, did you want to, let me unmute. Sorry, she's trying to talk but can't. I'm trying to unmute you here. 1 second. Hang on 1 second. Oh, you're unmuted.
Good, so now I can talk. Okay, great. So it's really great that so many of you are on nonprofit boards, because that can be a good learning ground in preparation for being on a corporate board. Learning the dynamics, the brain trust of the people sitting around the table, solving problems together. It can be very helpful, although it is different than being on a corporate board, but it can be helpful from that skill level point of view. Where are we now with the number that are on a corporate board, Naomi?
We are on 45% are on a corporate board, or have ever served on a corporate board. 48% would like to, have not, but would like to.
Okay, good. All right, well, and it is a changing world, and that's part of the reason why we are here today, is to talk about how it is changing on the corporate board. Oh, there's the numbers. Okay, great. How it's changing, how you might fit. If you're already on a corporate board, how can you get that next one? So there's lots of issues. This is much more complex than going for a job interview. It's a whole different world of language and narrative, of focus, of talking about yourself differently. There's just so much that's different when you're seeking a board position. So to see that a lot of you have already served on nonprofits is great. And one of the differences between being on a nonprofit and corporate, anybody who's been on both, you'll probably agree that nonprofit boards tend to be more dysfunctional than corporate boards. There's a lot of infighting and alliances and factors and all that kind of thing that often happen on nonprofit boards. Generally speaking, corporate boards are more professional, although they can get into their own factions and alliances and problems and egos and that kind of thing too, which is part of both Janet and I are board advisors, and we sometimes get called in for those kinds of things. So it still happens, but it's all very interesting. All right.
Wonderful. Well, I think we can go and get ahead and get started if you want to. You want to do that, Janelle? I know we've got a good number of people here. We've got 41 people on the line. As I said, we have muted everybody just so that there's no background noise. You have the option to ask questions in the chat box, so please do use that chat box to ask questions or comments or make comments as you go, and feel free to comment back to everybody. And if you see someone in there that you want to send a private message to, you can do a private chat as well. So please do use that. This is a networking session. So a quick review of how today's session is going to go. I'm going to introduce InTouch to you all and talk to you a little bit about and introduce Janelle. And then Janelle will be hosting today or moderating today with Janet Jankura. And then once we're done with the speaking and then a Q&A, and the Q&A will happen over the chat, then we will move to rooms, which is where we break out into smaller groups, and each individual group is able to unmute and discuss a particular topic, or even discuss any of the topics that we speak to today. Okay, so I'm going to kick off just a little bit about InTouch before we start today. As a lot of you know, there's a lot of members here on the call. InTouch is a global professional network of executives and retired executives. They all have large networks, years of experience, wide-ranging skill sets, and a lot of them are board ready. And you can see from even some of the comments in the chat box today how that extends. We allow businesses to recruit from our membership network for free, which means that any roles that are included, board roles, advisor roles, interim roles, and even C-suite roles, are either advertised on our site, or companies are able to directly approach any one of our members to invite them to an interview. We guide our members and we help them to get board ready. We do that through educational events, just like the one that we're on today. Courses, we run one called Boards, Be Ahead of the Curve. Janelle leads that course. And then we also have on-demand videos, podcasts, thought leadership, other events that we do and forums that we run.
And executive coaching.
And we do have executive coaching. Well, I'll be talking a lot about that in a moment. Yes, absolutely. So now I'm going to introduce Janelle, and we're going to kick off today's interview. As an internationally known board and corporate consultant, executive coach, trainer, speaker, and facilitator, Janelle Britton has helped over 140 corporate clients and also 170 nonprofit client companies in developing their boards and their leaders. I mean, she knows boards really, really well. She's served on boards for 40 years, and for 12 years, Janelle was director of the Boardology Institute for Boardroom Bound, and she was also the managing director of the Mastermind Advisory Board, which was an organization created, an organization which created custom corporate advisory boards. So she's been on both sides, both creating the boards, serving on the boards, and also advising and consulting the boards. Janelle actually works as an InTouch executive and board coach. She helps executives meet their goals of joining corporate boards. She does that through helping them with strategic planning, personal development, and also professional development. Over her time working as a board coach, Janelle has placed over 90 people onto corporate boards, so a very impressive track record. But Janelle, thank you for joining us today and for leading this session. I will hand it over to you.
As always, it's a delight, Naomi. I would like to introduce to you Janet Jankura, who brings to the boardroom courage courage and integrity to lead in challenging times. Now, isn't that something that we need today with what the boards are facing? She has served for 15 years as a board director of 6 public and private companies. She was first recruited to be a charter independent board member of Green Earth Technologies, a publicly traded commercial consumer goods manufacturer. She oversaw the growth of GET, the abbreviations as we always use them, helping to triple its annual revenue into an international award-winning organization. She has served on many of the committees involved with boards: compensation, executive committee, audit board, audit committee member. She has facilitated 3 CEO successions and a variety of corporate transformations at the companies that she has served as a board director. Now, she also has her own board advisory consulting company. She has an extensive career serving as an HR leader for companies such as Rockwell Automation and National City Corporation. And she was an active duty officer with the U.S. Marine Corps, responsible for 11,000 people worldwide command. Thank you, Janet, for your service. I'm very pleased to be here today with you to help bring out your insights, Janet, and the lessons that you have learned from being on corporate boards. So the first question I'd like to begin with asking you is, what made you want to be on a corporate board? You had a successful career. Mm-hmm. What made you want to switch over to be on a corporate board?
Okay. Thank you, Janelle, and hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you and talk with you and help you in your journey to board membership. So, I started when I was in human resources and organizational development. I really liked strategic level work and leading high performance teams. And when I moved to Northeast Ohio, it was a new community for me. And so I got involved with the Art Museum Board. I really enjoyed that. And then I dabbled a little bit into politics, and I got appointed by the mayor of Cleveland to a civic board. And I really enjoyed serving and giving guidance to management, doing governance. So from that, I said, gee, I'd like to serve on a corporate board. And I started to research what that takes.
And as you started to research what that takes, now this was how many years ago?
This about 22, something like that.
22 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, the scene 22 years ago is different than the scene now as far as the board is concerned.
Yes.
So back then, you would have been a pioneer as far as women wanting to be on boards, number
Mm-hmm.
one.
Sure.
Tell us how you got that first board opportunity.
Okay. Well, I was recruited to my first board by a small boutique search firm. And it was for a new thin cap public company board, Green Earth Technologies, and they were just post IPO. I got to learn a little bit about them. I loved their focus on sustainability. They made green motor oil and are environmentally friendly products. So I really thought it would be great to shape the future of such a disruptive business. They had some challenges. They were founder-led, and they needed a professional CEO. There were 3 CEO successions in 5 years, which is a lot. And, when I came onto the board, they really had no formal structure or systems or processes. They didn't really have any board committees established yet, so we implemented them, and I served on the compensation and audit committees. And also we helped them with risk management and strategic planning. So, another challenge that first board faced was getting American Petroleum Institute certified. That was really big for our product, and moving from commercial to retail sales. So all of those things, I liked the business. It was just a great match in terms of my skills and what they were seeking.
And I think that is so important to be able to match, again, your skills. And the challenges that they were facing were like CEO succession, ones that you are familiar with talent development and choosing the right kind of talent. But the other challenges you had was you essentially had to help them set up
their
board governance, right?
Yes, everything from the scratch, yes.
And that's what many first-time board members might be finding themselves in. If they're with a young company or even a startup company, they may not have some of the basic governance structures. And that I really advocate that if that might be a target for you, that you get some training on what is board governance and what does it take to do that. For instance, here at In Touch, we have a program that Naomi mentioned where we teach some of the foundational aspects of board governance. Because you might have that opportunity to help them get started on the right foot. So what competencies are you seeing that boards are looking for today versus when you first came on?
Okay, I would say pure leadership, and that's just the social influence to get people to do their best work, right? I mean, especially right now, crisis management is definitely one that's you got to have that now, being agile and flexible. And I would also say another change is that boards are looking for people who are technology and cybersecurity savvy.
And that brings up the whole subject of subject matter expertise.
Yes.
And in the, quote, olden days of 10 years or more ago, you came on in the olden days, they were largely looking for CEOs.
Yes.
Or again, like yourself, with very high level HR talent development aspects. But in today's world, there are many other specific competency areas that they're looking for. Like you mentioned, the cybersecurity, IT transformation, when companies have to go through entire enterprise-wide IT transformation, that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
And then other areas like merger and acquisition, maybe a company is getting to a point in their career where it's time for them to acquire another company. They've never done that before. So if you have had experience in that, then that creates a nice opportunity for you, for instance.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that, Janelle. You know, so to have a competency in one or more domains, especially if you are a financial expert, because boards are looking for people who can serve on the audit committee. So that definitely comes in handy. You know, international markets. Also, if you have a director certification that you've earned, I myself have gone through the National Association of Corporate Directors Governance Fellow Program, and that has you take like a deep dive into governance and get educated. And I think also boards are also looking for a big time commitment now. I think the average that board members give is up to 250 hours per year, and that was before this crisis now. So I'm sure that it's increased.
Yeah, that statistic of the 200 to 250 is more or less for a healthy company on an equal basis with not a lot of crisis going on. But if there is a crisis, you would be touching issues regarding that company every day. For instance, a couple weeks ago, we were having one of our boards being ahead of the curve programs, and had a speaker who's on the board of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And just before he walked in to give his lecture with us, the CME called an emergency meeting, and they decided to close the trading floors of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And you know, he is on 20 company boards.
Wow.
So can you imagine how much time he's having to spend with having 20 companies facing this crisis in one way or another? So asking yourself, do I have the time to be able to really commit? Because in the olden days, you'd come to a meeting once a quarter and have like a half a day, maybe a day meeting, and then go golfing. And now,
that's right.
It was like a resort. It was like a club, you know, it was a lot of fun, not a lot of responsibility. You just rubber stamped whatever the CEO wanted, and then you went home. You know? And it was college friends of the CEO who they invited onto the board. And sometimes celebrities even, just so they could go play golf with them. However, as you know, things have changed since Enron, et cetera, and now boards are really being held responsible, even private company boards. And I say even more so private company boards in some ways, because like they're founder owned, and the founder wants results. They don't want to just pay a friend to come and sit on a board. They can go out and have a drink with a friend. they need results. And so there you tend to be more achievement focused as well. Any thoughts around that?
Oh, definitely. All of those things, Janelle. And I'd say, so say, for example, if you're seeking to be on a public company board, you have to have independence. You really do want to be that independent director. I'd say, you definitely have to be a collaborator now. It's certainly a strategic thinker, ask the good questions, the tough questions, right, to get the information that you need. I think also boards have become more transparent, just board members being honest with each other. There are boards now that assess their own effectiveness and kind of rate the performance of fellow board members, but it's all to increase the effectiveness of the board. So, and I think also like today's board members have to be effective with a variety of stakeholders. So not only management, but investors, regulatory bodies, customers perhaps. And so you really need to bring that diversity of perspective.
And even the community.
Yes, that's true. You
and
betcha.
the environment. There are multiple levels of stakeholders that the board has to pay attention to today. You were starting to talk about the qualities that boards look for in people. So you mentioned collaboration. Could you talk a little bit about board dynamics and how you've seen that play out?
Sure. The board just has to be able to communicate with each other and the CEO and the C-level. And you need to be able to have executive sessions and talk to those executives. And it's almost like a dynamic in any group, right? You have people with different styles. So some companies in their assessment of board directors do like a leadership assessment to see what styles are, to see how you would fit and mesh with the other members. You might have someone who's just a real driver, right? And there may be others that don't speak up, and you need to have people who will bring them out, kind of deal. So you just need to address any issues, conflict, right? Elephants in the room, and handle it accordingly. It might be things that you can deal with at the committee level, or some might be better for the board level or the executive sessions. But so like with any group, you want to have just a good vibe where people are feeling comfortable with each other and they're honest with each other.
One of the biggest complaints I get from boards when they bring on a new board director is that this person comes on with an executive mindset rather than a board mindset.
Sure.
That they think they're used to having authority and telling people to do things and having like the ability that if you don't do it, I fire you and get rid of you. But on a board, they have to have a brain trust. They have to be collaborative. They have to persuade others, and they all make the decision together. Have you seen that kind of challenge?
Absolutely. So I think one of the good practices is to go through an orientation of the company. So board orientation, not only what it's like to be a board member and all that service, but also get to know the company, go on tours, meet employees, meet customers, understand the product or the service, and just really say, hey, I'm here to learn because I'm adding value on the board.
Well, what role does the board play during challenging times?
Okay. A lot greater of a role than we ever thought, right? So right now in my current company, my day job, right, where I lead human resources, we're a private company, private equity owned. And so right now the board is working more closely with us than they ever have before. We have daily contact with them. And so what I can see they're doing, because I did it before when I served on boards, and we are doing also at the executive level, is we're assessing the company's exposure to and financial impact to operations and strategic impacts. And we have to define what our crisis response roles are, right? So we need to say, what needs to come from the board or what needs to come from management. And I think we also see we need to have effective management internal communications, so what they're telling employees about what's going on and what's going to happen, kind of thing. And also the aspect of we need to address the challenge of providing external stakeholders with accurate information as the crisis is evolving, so they understand, how it impacts them, whether it be your customers, investors, your community. The boards have to keep all of that in mind.
And it's a tough situation because we have to balance profit
Yes.
versus people,
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders, and have short-term and long-term goals simultaneously while being stressed out all at the same time.
You bet.
But I think that that's one of the qualities of a leader, is to not show that you are stressed out, to remain calm in these stressful times, and to have the thinking head on versus the emotive head on. The primal brain needs to be suppressed while we are having higher level thoughts to be able to solve the problems. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, that's something that fortunately I was able to hone that skill as a Marine Corps officer, right? So I bring
Yes.
that, I bring that to not only my executive roles, but also board roles, and just trying to teach people that. It's tough though. It's challenging all of us right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, well, let's take a breath from the whole COVID-19 and get back to the board, other kinds of topics.
Okay.
How has the recruitment process changed over the years?
Well, I think, you know, boards still want the subject matter experts, but they also want them to have broad business experience and informed judgment. And so right now, Janelle, you mentioned earlier there was a person that was serving on 20 boards, right? So oftentimes CEOs are serving on a number of boards, and their shareholders are saying, hey, you're serving on too many. You got to do your day job here, and we're going to limit that. So what boards are doing is we're looking deeper into the organization for talent, because the CEOs are tapped out. So, you know, we'll try to find other proven leaders that's maybe the C-level or further down, depending on the role. And oftentimes, the boards will be looking for people who are high-level consultants, right? Or they could have been providers to boards too, that really know exactly what it's like. I think also that boards now are going outside of their own networks to get diversity of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And we're connecting with board-related organizations like In Touch, right, who prepare and connect
Yay.
candidates with boards. Yeah, and organizations that specialize in, especially minority candidates. So say, for
Mm-hmm.
example, CalPERS has a diverse director data source that aspiring
Mm-hmm.
directors can register for consideration. And so boards want to reach out and have those members on their boards. I think also what's changed too is there's more interviews now, like with the nominating committee, CEO, investors, and other key stakeholders. I believe that still networking and retained search is very important, and boards still do that, of course. But now boards are focusing on filling that skill gap that they need, and making sure the person has the right cultural fit for the board and the organization.
Mm-hmm. You bring up so many important points. I remember in the olden days, they just said fill a position.
Mm-hmm.
In current times, it's like a job description
Yeah.
of specifically what it is they are looking for. And I also find it interesting when they're listing that maybe there's 7 bullets. 2 of the bullets have to do with competencies, and 5 of the bullets would have to do with qualities,
Mm-hmm.
like the collaborator, the business leader, you know, the calm crisis manager, you know, those kinds of things are also very important. And you say that you have to interview for those, right?
Yeah, so you'll want to give examples of when you have demonstrated those. So I think that the board interviews, and I think we're going to get more into that in a little while too, Janelle, are more of they really want to get to know who you are, how you operate, what's your style, how you're going to mesh with them. Maybe not so much, again, what you know exactly professionally, but of course you're going to bring that. Yeah.
And the problem-solving abilities.
You bet.
What kinds of problems have you had experience in solving that might be related to this company and where this company is going? What kinds of problems might they be having in the future, and that kind of thing? Okay, good. What board search processes or resources have your companies used?
Okay. Well, we've definitely used networking. I think we get most of our board directors from networking, but we've also reached out to our investors, some industry experts of disruptive technologies, for example, in Green Earth Technologies cases. Also, we've asked our auditors, our legal counsel, and now I think that organizations will be asking crisis management firms who they know that have successfully led their companies through extremely difficult circumstances, right? And so, one of the things that I had in terms of crisis management on one of the boards I serve on is our organization burnt down, and we had to completely rebuild, and just no one was ready for that. And we had to tap into all kinds of resources to just pull everything together. And so another, I guess, processes that boards would use are executive search firms, of course, but those that find unusual candidates who can be scrappy, okay, especially for a small company, right? You'll want a board member that can understand how to do things differently.
Are you thinking like street smarts, kind of? Or?
Yes, or doing,
outside the box?
Outside the box, and also just thinking very creatively. What is totally different that we've never done, or how can we do this with a lot less budget?
Yes, good. I'm a firm believer that every year when the board takes their board retreat, that they should do an emergency exercise. So that you would take something like, what if our building burned down? And then say, what do we do? What would we do if there's a pandemic? What would we do if we were hacked? All those kind of what ifs, and play through those on a somewhat regular basis so that you have some readiness for those kinds of situations. How important is one's network to help in getting on a board?
Okay. Your network is very important. You never know who knows who that can help you. And so, let people know that you're interested in board service, and have your elevator speech of value that you add, have it ready, but don't be overly aggressive. Just let it happen more naturally, right? Whenever you're doing these networking discussions and meetings, and please know you can't do it alone. Get help. You can have a network of advisors or your own board directors, right, that coach you. You can ask for a CEO level sponsorship. Catalyst is an organization that has that program where a CEO can sponsor you, and they kind of help introduce you to companies, recommend you, and pave the way. And then I would say, even after you're on a board, continue your education, continue networking, and develop relationships with other, directors at other organizations, and continue to join board-specific organizations so that you'll stay, current.
And the board field really is changing a lot and changing fast. So that's very good advice. How is board networking different than job networking?
Okay. Well, really what you're doing is you're selling the value you bring to the whole organization. And it's more about connecting with the other board directors and influencers rather than trying to get the job. And so, one of the things that you can do is you can write articles, post on social media, and do things that help other board directors. That's very helpful, because hopefully you might be asking them for something at some point. Doing speaking engagements, if you have an opportunity to do that, get out there, gives you some great visibility. I'd also say, develop relationships with retained search firms that specialize in boards. Make sure they have your material. That they're working for the client, but it's always good to get to know them, right? And also, again, the board search related organizations really help you to do more networking.
I like what you said when you mentioned the search firms. You said build a relationship with them. That's different than sending your resume out to them with a cover letter that says, I want to be on a board, but can't you fix me up? Right. They really need to know you and trust you.
You bet.
What is the role of trust between the board members?
Well, that's very important. You've got to have complete trust and respect. I mean, if you don't have that, then it's going to be dysfunctional.
Yeah. What questions should a board candidate be sure to ask to make sure that they are a good match?
Okay. One of them is just ask, what are the dynamics of the board? Describe it to me. How does the board operate? So Janelle, you mentioned that earlier. That's a really important ingredient. I also think that board candidates should ask, what's your relationship with the CEO, the COO, the CFO, and others, right? Talk to me about that, describe it. You should ask, what's expected of directors? Not only the things that are said, but the things that are unsaid, right? There might be some things that they don't quite tell you, but you want to know. Ask them how they assess board effectiveness. Ask them how they resolve conflict. Some of the things that, you want to make sure that they know how you excel in these areas, maybe, and how you've got some qualities that are what they need, but also helps you do your due diligence when you're asking them the questions.
Mm-hmm. And it's very different on a public company versus private company to try to figure out how healthy the company is, for instance.
Yes.
When a candidate is doing their due diligence to say, am I a match for this kind of company? A private company doesn't have to tell you everything until you get on the board and sign your NDAs and that kind of thing. Whereas a public company, you can go on the internet and you can learn an awful lot about them. So on a private company, how do you find out the real health of the company?
That's tough. I mean, again, I guess you could ask them about them and others, even outside the company. What are the company's values and culture? Do you all do any kind of employee satisfaction survey? What are those scores? Show me those scores. Hopefully they'll want to tell you good things, right? Say you try to find out what's their succession plan for the board and senior leadership. So maybe you want to see how they do that, if they're willing to just talk about it. Trying to find out what their relationship is with investors. Just say, how is that? How do you all operate together? What do analysts say about your company? Or that's, I think, more so with a public company, but even on private, what do other experts say about your company? And you can do some of that research too, and then just get them to tell you what distinguishes you from your competitors. They're not going to reveal their strategic plan, but okay, so what makes it so special here?
Mm-hmm. Good. And what mistakes do you think that board candidates have made during the search or interview process?
Yeah, I think one is being too, I really want to be on a board. Okay, yeah. You need to you need to relax and really believe that you're already kind of with that group, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think another thing that that's helpful to do is approach the board or company with a warm introduction if you have one, or something in common if you're trying to even cold call them, right? Or get in touch with the nominating committee chair through some type of something you have that you share. I think another mistake might be, being too scripted. You want to be more about the culture and rather than your expertise and your accomplishments. And I think another mistake that board candidates make is relying too heavily on social media and technology. Mm-hmm. You still want those phone calls and in-person meetings, and I know that's going to be tough right now in this environment, but even the video conferences that you can do, you just want to be just so they can get to know you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Well, after all of that, what do you like most about being on a board? What rewards are there for being on a board?
Yeah, I really like being able to influence the strategy and the future of the business. I love seeing the organization be successful. I like to coach the leadership team. That's something that I did in HR and organizational development. Mm-hmm. And I really love to learn from fellow board members. Mm-hmm. We all have a lot to teach each other, and it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. And I love the chemistry around the table, especially when we're solving tough problems mm-hmm. together and the different ideas. And if you have a team that is really open to each other's ideas and not shooting each other's ideas down a lot and causing antagonism, it can be an amazing chemistry mm-hmm. that is happening that is its own kind of high.
I agree.
Sitting around that board table. What about the other end of the spectrum? What are some of your biggest frustrations with being on a board?
Wow, okay. Well, I think on the public board, some of my frustrations were all of the regulations and requirements that the public board has to deal with, right? The visibility, I mean, everything that you do is visible. you know, your stock price, your profits. So there's a lot of scrutiny, activist investors, and there's a lot of pressure for short-term financials. And then on the private board side, I would say it's the investor squeeze for maximizing the profits, right? So often it's that family member or founder who aren't professional leaders, but that's all that, you know, oftentimes that's what their main focus is.
And maybe that's all that they have done
Mm-hmm.
for decades,
Yes.
and they don't know the outside world. And yeah, it can be frustrating from that standpoint too. For the first year of a new board director being on a board, what advice would you give to him or her in order to be effective?
Okay. So again, hopefully the company has a board orientation, and if not, you can suggest one and say, hey, can you put something together for me to help me learn the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And approach it from, I want to learn and I want to contribute. I want to add value. That's what you brought me here for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to develop good relationships with your fellow board members, you know, the C-level and everybody else, the community investors, key customers, that type of deal. So I mentioned before, go on tours, meet employees, ask the good questions, and then continue your director training and development.
Excellent. Naomi, have we had some questions that people like to ask?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to give everybody a minute or two to put their questions into the chat box, but I do have a couple here. This is a question from David Guzman. He said it's all, you know, we talk a lot about building companies, building them up, but how about skills in terms of a turnaround? So a company that is at rock bottom, those who really bring some of these brands and these businesses back from the dead. So what are the kinds of skills that you've seen that board members have to do that kind of work?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you want to answer it first, Janet?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think that problem-solving skills, you know, clearly, and also just creative thinking. What can we do differently that would really change this? And then saying maybe there's other people that can supplement us in our thinking, and who might those be? How can we involve them?
Yeah, I would say that from the turnaround standpoint, if a company is in a bad shape and they bring someone on the board to help with turnaround, it's appropriate to bring in maybe a new CEO or a new executive to help with the turnaround too, because from the board we're influencing. The executive staff is the doing part.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it is an absolute important skill to have. And I would certainly list it in your list of cadre of subject matter expertise. I wouldn't feature it as the only thing that you do. But it's good that they should know that you have that ability. So if they know that they're on a downturn, they don't quite want to admit it yet, and they need some insight on how to bring it back up again, you might be the right candidate for that.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
And then there's a bit of a discussion going on right now about whether boards can meet exclusively on video and remotely. And of course, we're all being forced to do it now, and I'm sure every board in the world is meeting and speaking, and they're doing it over video and telephone. But, you know, Ilan Jiva said, can boards meet remotely, and can they be effective that way? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
I can offer an idea on that.
Sure.
From a governance standpoint, the governance thoughts behind a board making decisions is that we have discussion. So as long as there is discussion and video conferencing, we can have great discussions and we can make decisions this way. It is legal and it is considered legitimate. If it's degraded, I'm going to call it down to email, that can cause a little more problem because email threads and those kinds of things. And I think that video conferencing is so much more effective for a board, especially if they are in crisis and having to make fast, tough decisions. And unless there's something in their bylaws, and most companies don't have anything in their bylaws against it, but I will tell you nonprofits do. Some nonprofits have to have open meetings that people could attend. And they have to be, if they're going to not meet at a regular time on Tuesday at 7 o'clock or whatever, they have to make an announcement 2 weeks in advance. So they need to make sure that they have some other policies that allow them to be able to handle crisis situations with, let's say, an executive committee scenario. I probably gave you more than what you wanted there, but.
Sounds good. I think also we're seeing that annual meetings now, the shareholder annual meetings, people are trying to figure out, oh my goodness, how can we do these? You know, how can we do that legally, right? So everyone's trying to figure that out. One of the boards that I serve on, I'm an elected official. I chair the Richfield Township Board of Trustees, and by our charter, or the Ohio Revised Code, we have to meet in person. You know, we cannot, we've asked them even in this environment, and they're sticking with that. So we're, you know, I think everyone's trying to work through it.
Yeah, and that is common in nonprofits.
Wonderful. I've got more questions coming in now. Somebody said, what is the best way to articulate your skill set for a potential board position? Like how should you position it? And I know, Janelle, you work with a lot of members on personal brand and the way that you deliver the pitch. And Janet, would love to hear from you how you do it, just in terms of delivering that message.
I do it from a coaching standpoint, and what I find most often is that people are stuck in their mindset of being an executive when they go to describe what it is they bring to a board. And so I spend the first part of my work with anyone on helping them to make that shift to a board mindset and to look at their accomplishments from 20,000 feet up, you know, and look at their entire career from a board's point of view, and then look at, okay, so what would you bring to a board and how shall we talk about that? And I would also urge that in the American market to not use a lot of adjectives like the most excellent something or another, and a real hype kind of a phrase that's not respected at the board level. My experience is at the board level, your accomplishments should speak for themselves, and you don't need to add a lot of hyperbole in front of the description of what it is you bring. What's your experience, Janet?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Janelle. I think also it helps to articulate your skills if you have that elevator speech, you know, because you're going to be meeting people when you're networking. And you're going to want to just tell them in a couple of brief statements the value that you add to a board, right? So, you know, have that ready, just be comfortable with it. Certainly you want to talk more about it, but you can even share articles that you've written, things that you've done that you think might help the organization that you want to get into, just purely by sharing. And then they can see, oh, okay, you know, this person is forthcoming, does want to help, things like that.
That's great. And I would urge that you have multiple narratives. So that if you're having a conversation right now with someone that their board could use your, let's say, HR talent abilities, then you focus on what it is you bring to a board around that. Whereas if you're talking to someone that's very concerned about operations and you have experience, then you have a narrative around that. So you pick out, for many of you, you have 3 or 4 different competency areas that could be helpful to a board. So you have a couple of sentences that would describe what you could bring and or what kinds of problems you could help a company solve or address, or provide insights into the solving of those kinds of problems. Any other thoughts, Janet?
I think you covered it.
Okay. Naomi, we have any more questions?
Yeah, we do. We've got a few more. There's so right at the beginning of this session, we polled the audience to see who had been on a nonprofit board, and around 82% of the people on the call had been on a nonprofit board. One of the questions here is, how do I leverage what I've learned and my experiences on a nonprofit board for a corporate board? Like, how do people translate that? And I think that'll be very relevant to a lot of folks here on the call.
Yeah, see, some of the people that are serving on the nonprofit boards are also on company boards, right? So I think you can certainly, you know, get to know them, let them know you're interested in corporate board leadership. And I think you can take the skills that you've learned and the committees that you might have served on your nonprofit board, and some of them translate directly, right? It could be audit or risk or maybe compensation, something like that. So if you kind of study up on what the corporate board does and say, okay, how can I, you know, say I've done these things on nonprofit, and then put it into their language, put it into their world.
Excellent. And I would build on that and say, try to be an officer on a nonprofit board or serve on one of those committees.
Yeah.
Or chair a committee. Again, there are different kinds of, the more sophisticated nonprofits would have audit and that kind of thing. The younger, smaller organizations may not, but also your professional association. Those are a good experience too. To be on those boards, and often they will have more of those those committees that you could chair to bring the experience.
And just in terms of experience, somebody's actually asked, they've said that their experience has been a lot of boards are asking for specific industry experience, which I don't know if that's always the case, but what are your thoughts on that? Is that common that people want industry in the board members?
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the size of the organization. Maybe I think the smaller organizations might need that because they really need for the board members to even help coach the leadership on some things that are specific to the industry. But I think the larger companies, it's not necessary. I don't know. That's my thought.
Yeah, I'd say that it depends on the composition of the board currently.
Yeah.
So I think that every board should have at least one industry expert on the board.
Good.
So that they can be there to help them understand the bigger picture of the industry. But you don't have to fill up the whole board with industry specialists, generally speaking, unless it is a startup kind of thing. But even then, you want to have somebody, for instance, if it's a startup, you want to have somebody who can help you find funding, can find capital. So you're a finance kind of person, and you want to have someone who can help with sales and marketing, and someone who knows the industry, who can introduce you to the right kind of people. So there's still a different kinds of talent needed. But industry, and there is another plus regarding coming from the industry. I often recommend that the first corporate board you be on would be one that you know the industry, because there's such a big learning curve anyway to learn what it takes to be on a board. So if you know that industry, you don't have to learn the product and the industry. You just need to learn how to be a good board director and contribute from that standpoint. So that could be a plus.
Absolutely. And somebody had a question about a question. Well, the question was the number of hours. It seemed like a lot. They said that might be only a possibility for retired people who don't have a full-time job. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Is there maybe a sort of scale of time commitment? What's your experience been on that, Janet?
You know, my board service, we hadn't spent kind of those average number of 200 to 250 hours, right? That it is pretty high. So again, it depends on the stage of the company. You know, of course, you're going to have quarterly meetings, your committee meetings, annual meetings, and your other work in between. So I think certainly now that's going to increase. I think not only through the crisis, but I think also going forward, we're probably going to see directors having to give more time, but it's a quality time that they give to the different duties that they serve.
Yes, let's think about how the time is spread out over the year as well. So you have maybe quarterly meetings, and the quarterly meetings might be a day and a half.
Right.
So you have your committee meetings on the first half day, you have dinner with the board, and then the next day is a full day board meeting. That's sort of a typical schedule, right? But then in between, there will be things to read. There will be reports to read before the board meeting. I ask that if somebody really wants to be effective on a board, that they allocate the better part of a day to read the board documents before the board meeting, so that you are well versed. And in your first year of being on a board, you're learning that company. So I advocate you read it as early as possible so that you can ask questions and call up the CFO and say, I don't understand this financial report. Could you explain it to me? So that you'll get yourself up to speed. So the first year is a little more time. Then after you get to know the company, it may not be as much. But as Janet says, it depends on the health of the company, the maturity of the company, stage of development, or maybe it's a growing company and then it wants to go IPO. Well, that's a big change. Wants to go through an acquisition. Those kinds of things require more time. But so this is a part of your due diligence. If you want to find a good match for you, find out the stage of the company, and with the people who you're talking to, do an estimate and try to be as honest as, get them to be as honest as they can, and then add some more time to whatever they say. You might be somewhat accurate for the amount of time it will take.
Wonderful. And then I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. People have been asking whether you have a lot of experience with boards meeting alone without the CEO, and what kinds of conversations happen, and whether that's acceptable, depending on the, I mean, I'm sure a private and public company has different rules, but has that happened before? Do you have experience with that?
Yes. So yeah, you can go into executive session, and oftentimes it might be to try to identify areas where you might need to help coach the CEO, right, and evaluate them. There may be some other issues that you just need to discuss that makes more sense with just the board members. For example, if you're talking about any issues that you may be experiencing amongst yourselves, right, you could spend some time alone working on that. But I think so say, for example, on one of the boards, we always have to have a specific reason to be in executive session without CEO or management, and we have to stick to that.
Yeah, I'd say that there are a variety of reasons to go into executive session. Some boards have it as a rule or a practice that they always have an executive session before the board meeting, so that they have a forum to be able to talk amongst themselves. And I'd say it also depends on whether you have a lead director or a chairperson, or if the CEO is also the chairperson, and how that there's a dynamic that's different there. So to Janet's point about the board working amongst themselves, part of the role of a chair or lead director is to get information to the CEO about how that person could be more effective without bringing it up in the middle of the board meeting. Some of the more delicate kinds of conversations that need to happen.
Right.
So that's an opportunity for them to come together about what they are suggesting, especially if it's something really serious that's going on regarding the CEO. You can imagine, you see the headlines of the public companies. As a matter of fact, just today, Groupon, their CEO has just been demoted to be an employee.
Wow.
And their COO as well.
Okay.
That was a board decision, So you can imagine, though, when there's those kinds of things going on, or the Boeing issues, et cetera, or sexual harassment issues, there are those tough conversations. But again, other boards just do it as a standard practice. Now, in nonprofit boards, often you go into the executive session if you're going to be talking about like the salaries of the staff and the executives and those kinds of things. And also an executive session can have the CEO in if you want. You can choose to have an outside consultant to come in, the CEO to come in, a certain staff member to come in, whatever, depending on what topic you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, because the main role of the board is, one of the main roles of the board is to hire and fire the CEO, right? So you'll certainly want to try to make that person, help them be as effective as they can be.
Good question.
And then I think just a final question. This is always on the minds of people, I'm sure, at a public company. Any risks and liabilities that people should be thinking about, and obviously the due diligence they do on the firms when they join the board. Do both of you have advice on that?
I'm wondering if the question is about risks and liabilities to yourself as a board director. I can certainly answer it from that perspective as well. You know, most organizations have directors and officers insurance, and so you want to find out what that is. Hopefully you'll never have to use it, but it's a good idea that as part of your due diligence to find out what it is.
I don't know about any of you, but I don't like to read insurance policies. So I would advise that you get a copy. If you are chosen or a finalist or whatever, ask for a copy of the D&O insurance. Take it to a different company's D&O insurance rep. Have them look at it, describe to them the company type, and ask them what riders, you know, does this have the appropriate riders that are necessary for this company in this industry with this kind of risk? So again, it's coming from a competitor, so they might say, well, you know, you need to add another one of these over there or whatever, but it will tell, that person will hopefully be frank with you about, well, it'll cover you or it won't, may not in certain circumstances.
And should everybody take out D&O insurance on every kind of board, nonprofit? What is there a huge risk there? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Nonprofit board, corporate board, absolutely. I will not go on a nonprofit board if they don't have D&O insurance. You have fiduciary responsibility. Somebody can sue you. A stakeholder, a member, a funder can sue the board. So you gotta have that insurance. Thank goodness. I know that was a question you knew the answer to, Naomi.
We've heard it many times before.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
And then yeah, I think we're going to sort of circle up. Any last final words, Janet or Janelle, that you'd like to share with the group? And then just so everybody knows, we won't be ending the session yet. We have an opportunity for everybody to connect for about 20 minutes afterwards. So stay on for that. But Janet and Janelle, any final words and thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, it's a journey, and it's going to take time, right? So just, do your best to move through that journey and have other people helping you, giving you feedback. I mean, if you can possibly get feedback if something works out or doesn't work out, or how you did in the recruiting process or whatever. And so just have other people assist you. Go ahead, reach out. Utilize organizations like In Touch and others to help you be more successful in your board seat.
Yes, absolutely. It is different than anything else you've ever done. It requires thinking about yourself in ways you've never thought about yourself before. And yet it will provide you with some challenges that are so rewarding that it will be worth stretching to be able to do it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Janet, for joining us here as our guest, and Janelle for leading the conversation. It was a lot of great insights. I mean, from anything from joining a board to once you're on a board. And I think the topic that we're going to be discussing in the individual rooms that we're going to set up right now is really topical. It's the question is, what skills do boards require today, and what do you think is really needed on boards? And of course, we've talked about crisis management, we've talked about these things, but is that sort of right now? The question is, long-term, board members have, you know, terms of 2, 3, 4 years. What is it that's going to drive them through? So we're going to get on those rooms in just a second. Janet, will you be joining us in those rooms?
I may be.
Okay, we'll put you in one of the rooms, and then if you need to drop or anybody needs to drop, we've got, like I said, 20 minutes, 30 minutes for everyone to get to know each other. So we have Janelle's room. Janelle, you will be leading a room. Thomas is going to be leading another room. And then I will be in another room. And then Joe Bernstein, are you still on the line? Yeah, you're there. Joe, would you mind leading one of the rooms? I knew you would. Nice. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to open up the rooms. You will all be able to unmute. And the topic of conversation is going to be, what skills do you think are required? But if you guys decide you want to go into a different direction, you can also discuss other things that are topical. So there's about 6 or 7 people in a room. So I'm going to open those rooms up right now. Okay, there are a few people who are not in a room. Let me put you into rooms. 1 second. Hang on 1 second. Okay. 1 moment. Oh, no. The first time I'm doing this, so give me 2 seconds. Let me see if I can get people into unassigned. Here we go.
That's got to be a new board skill, right? How you operate
I
Zoom.
know. It will be. It will be. Assigned to, there we go. Assigned to, you're going to go into, let's go into Naomi Kent's room. And David Freeman, go into Thomas's room. Okay. Hi, who's in my room? Let's unmute all. There we go. Right, is everyone able to speak? Hi, Barbara, how are you? Hi, Rob, can you hear us? Jerry, are you able to hear us? Jerry looks like he's fallen asleep. John, are you on the line? Barbara, is everyone there? Hello. You're all off muted now. We can hear you. Jeffrey, John, David Freeman, are you on the line? I don't know. Can anyone hear me? You can hear me. Okay, great. Can you?
Yes, I am here. I'm just
You're
having a
unmuted.
hard time with my microphone.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, all right, well, let's kick off. So, Barbara, can you hear us? No, I don't think so. John's on the line? Everybody's a little bit quiet. I think people might have dialed out. Anyway, okay, so it's me, Janet, you're on, David, you're on, and Jerry, and the others, I guess, can jump in if they need to. So what are everyone's thoughts? Jerry, tell us your thoughts on some of the skills on boards today.
Oh, what am I thinking? I'm not sure what I'm thinking. I guess right now the clear thought of the ability to come up with new ideas as to how to meet and how to be effective in these times is probably preeminent. You still have work to do, and that's not going to go away, but you have to find a different way to do it than you've done before.
So creativity, I think, right? Problem solving.
Yes, that, and yes, and bringing the group together.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And David Freeman, you're on the line.
I am on the line.
Hi, David. So what are your thoughts on the topic? Anything that you've seen recently with different businesses and the things that they might need right now?
It's sort of a generic question. I mean, obviously we're living through an unusual time, so I think everybody's trying to figure out how to navigate, you know, the work from home coronavirus thing.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably the common theme, if there is such a thing.
Well, I mean, I think also there's a danger for us to think that that's everything right now. I think it's not just about how to handle things and sort of crisis management, but I think it's also about future planning, right? And thinking, how are we going to change the way that we do business? I mean, I've already been on multiple calls with people where they've talked about how they can maybe bring out new product lines, new services, how they can service the people around them now, you know, to improve what they're doing. So that's kind of, I guess a lot of what's happening right now. Janet, would you say that, I mean, I don't know, you don't have to tell us the names or anything confidential, but I assume you've been meeting with your boards right now.
Yes, yeah, we sure have. Absolutely. And, you know, and a lot of it is to just try to kind of calm the panic and to, you know, work with leadership to make sure that they're communicating with our constituents and answer the questions in advance. You know, give them all the information that you can. So, yeah, hopefully we'll move through this and come out better on the other side, huh?
Yeah, I guess that's definitely the main aim. And I think, does anyone have any comments about what we talked about today? I thought the whole remote meeting was an interesting question, and I thought, well, I like we talked about in the beginning, you know, you want to go and play golf after the session and all those sorts of things. I mean, you know, is there much of that happening? Do you find your board meetings are really like take a whole day, or is it much shorter now anyway? Oh,
Janet is muted.
Janet, I think you're muted.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think the board still needs to invest time in just mingling and hanging out with each other. You need to have some of that downtime still. I have seen the amount of time in that reduce because people are so busy. They got to get to the board meeting and get back to what their regular duties are, right? So you want to try to make whatever activities or things that you do really worthwhile. But I think we still need to continue to do that. It's good team building.
Absolutely. I just realized that John and Jeffrey, this is their phone. Oh, no, this is their video, but it's not their phone. So they're in another room, which is really odd, right? I think it's hard to understand that people are in different rooms when we're really just all here. But let me just have a quick, let me just do something real quick. Where are we? God, this is difficult. Is Mary in our room? No. Paul? Nope. I'm struggling with where we are right now. I think we might be, oh dear. We might be people lost in a different group. Let me see if I can move one of you around. Jerry, I'm going to see if I can move you. Not because we don't want you in here, but well, no, I can. Yeah, I can't do it.
Don't hurt your back.
No, I'm trying to see if I can actually just do something. No, I can't seem to do it. Let me see. Yeah, and Barbara, you there? No, she's not there. That's just her video or her page, but she's in another room as well. So, 1 second. Let me see if I can. You know what? I don't think we're. Sorry about this, Janet. I'm trying to get us out of here and into another room because these people are not on this call. I can't work out how to do it. I'm sorry. Let me just jump out and I'll jump back in.
retired. I took early retirement from my hospital. So this is what I'm looking to do now. I'm not done. I'm not finished yet. I'd like to get involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Now focus on something you really want to do, right?
Exactly. I'm hoping I can still have an impact. I believe I can.
Yeah. I'm sure you can. Naomi's
Hi
here.
guys, how are you? Hello. I don't know what's happened, but I've lost some people. They are stuck in a room. This is like one of those video games where you kind of can't find anybody. Let me see. Oh God, what have I done? I don't know. There's a room with some
Learning
people in it. And I
experience.
can't find it. Yeah, I can't find it. Anyway, I think I've lost some people. So how are you guys? How's everybody doing?
We got started before you got there.
Good. Yeah. How'd it go?
Going well, I think. We're just introducing ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
just basically kind of saying where we're at with everything, Naomi, like where we're at in our quest, I guess you'd say.
Wonderful. And has anybody gone? Has anybody had any specific interest, sort of, I don't know, any kind of progress that they've made recently? Has anything specific happened?
Okay. I'm brand
Or is-
spanking
is-
new. I'm just out of corporate data governance kind of stuff and looking to move into something else.
Okay. Wonderful.
For me, I'm in the board interviewing process for a nonprofit locally here, and I met with the executive director and director of development for the first round. Second round was a former president of the board, and now the stage I'm in is kind of like a panel review with the overall board to make a decision, and then if they bring me on board, they'll do the induction at their annual meeting over the summer.
Got it. Got it. Wonderful. Excellent. I guess a few of you are just sort of starting out, getting your board resumes and LinkedIn profiles reviewed. Is that right?
Correct.
You haven't even done that
Wonderful.
yet.
Oh, you haven't done that yet? Okay, no problem. Well, one of the things I frequently recommend, and this is actually some of the things that Janet and Janelle talked about, is make sure that you have a very good understanding of A, what you bring to a board, but B, what types of boards you might be targeting. So for example, is it small businesses, medium-sized businesses, ESOPs, private companies, family-owned businesses? You know, there are different dynamics and different cultures across those businesses. A startup, for example, you might be working with a 28-year-old CEO, right? So, those are big differences in the way that they work and what you have to deal with. Some people are very scrappy and they like to get involved and can work with the disorganization of a startup. Others can't. So just something to consider, something to think about. And what does everybody think of this virtual event? This is probably our first really big one. And I say really big, it's probably about 45 people, but this is the first large one we've held. What are your thoughts on this versus an in-person?
The travel costs were right in line.
And time.
I'm kind of used to this sort of scenario. We do a lot of this on a day-to-day basis anyway, where I work, and I'm doing even
Good.
more of it now lately with the situation. But and I like it. I like the convenience of it. I like being able to sit at home and be able to interact with people. I do understand there's value in the face-to-face too. I haven't been through any of those yet with In Touch, but I'm looking forward to those. But yeah, I mean, so far I think it's a good way to go, and I think the content was very good. At least for
I think
a starter.
I think it's a lot easier to get a lot more participation, and it's kind of more flexible.
Good. Yeah, and I think
it'd be nice to be a combination. I'm sorry. Be a nice to be a combination of virtual and in-person events, because you even though you work with a global organization as well, I mean there is nothing like literally going out and having a beer with somebody, that kind of thing, to help build rapport in networking. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
in
do.
my healthcare system, we're used to Skype meetings all the time. Much easier to do.
Good, good. And one of the things some feedback that we received was that people really enjoyed having an initial meet like this, and then getting to know someone and hearing about what they do and who they are. And maybe we can even go around the room and say something that you need to learn about or something you need help with. And then to be able to then connect with that person afterwards in person if you wanted to, right? But it just kind of means, like you said, no travel, there's less time, but you still get to meet and greet a lot of the people that you'd like to meet. So I think a combination of both is exactly what we'll do.
Yeah, I've been using Zoom probably more so in the last month during everything. I find the value in the in-person events, but Richard's point too, I think you can get more participation out of the Zoom and online events as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And do you, I've also found that a lot of larger events tend to be a little bit more impersonal. We like to do the educational. We always bring speakers or someone who is getting interviewed to give their perspective on things. But would you also find it helpful to be maybe 10 people, 12 people, sort of boardroom style? Would that be good too? We've done a few of those and they've worked quite well.
I would be supportive of that. I think that type of scenario works really well for people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, bring people, in smaller groups like that, especially if they're geographically matched, would be great.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Where is everybody? Where are you guys located?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Where are we at, Rob?
Cleveland.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Gotcha.
Chicago.
I'm Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm Chicago.
There. Yeah, so just for some insight there, we were meant to be running a Cleveland event. So Rob, you probably heard about this a long time ago when we were setting that up. I think we set it up early February. And we had speakers, we had an event space, we had everything organized. And then about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we obviously pulled the plug. But so this was actually meant to be a Cleveland event. But I like the idea that you've got, which is bring people together from a particular city on a conference call. Then you can go ahead and meet, in person if you need to. So good ideas. So who has had their resume completed by our team? Board resume.
I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, I was working with Haley and I got that all completed. She's working on my LinkedIn profile now.
Good. Yeah. So
she's supposed to get that back to me here in a couple of days.
nice. So so anybody who did get the LinkedIn, sometimes you get a package with or without LinkedIn, it all depends. But the LinkedIn profile, one of the things I would strongly recommend when you look at LinkedIn is, I know we've always used it, I have at least for my executive roles. I even promote, it's about my business, about who my business is, less about me trying to find a job. So there's sometimes a lot of work needed to just take a LinkedIn profile and now make it so that you're promoting yourself as a board member. So a couple of really key things. You want to make sure that you have good contacts, so you know enough people. Don't just do friend everybody, accept everybody's friend request, because someone may ask you, hey, can you give me an introduction to someone? You want to be able to confidently be able to do that. So don't go out doing that like crazy, but try and connect to people that you do know. And then the second thing is make sure there are keywords, you're keyword optimized with things like board member, board director. Put your skills in there that are board related. So this crisis management as an example. And just make sure any board positions are in your LinkedIn profile. I can't tell you how many times people come to me and say, oh, I've got board experience. And I say, I can't see, there's nothing here. I don't see any of it. So if I were a CEO searching for a board member and you were connected to somebody I knew, your name would not appear in my search results because you've got no board experience. And I need someone who has board experience because most people won't take a risk on someone who's had absolutely none. So even a nonprofit, an industry board, a committee, anything like that needs to be on there. And then a professional headshot, something that looks like a board member, not a look particularly, but certainly more of a professional headshot than the iPhone at the wedding and whatever. So those are some of the things we recommend, and just things, making sure it's updated, no typos. Your companies are connected to the companies so that people can search on you, on industries and things like that. Yeah, we've actually had quite a few members who have come to us. They've had their LinkedIn reviewed, and within about 6 months, they've had companies calling on them, inviting them to connect on LinkedIn, and then talking to them about board positions. And that's just because they are visible as a board member. Before, they weren't visible as a board member. So it's really just about visibility.
And there's quite a transition too, from an executive position to a board position. You have to think totally different. You're right.
Yeah, if any of you get a chance to watch, and I'm sure we're still really busy here, but in some cases, if you got some downtime, there's a webinar that one of our coaches did about mindset and behaviors of people who are on boards, and how you have to really shift. It's critical thinking, it's problem solving, it's listening more than anything. So yes, I totally agree with you there. It's about shifting the wording that you use around the different roles that you've had to make it more appealing. And I always say to people, put yourself in the shoes of a CEO, and imagine you need an advisor around you. If you read your resume or you read your LinkedIn profile, would you be appealing to a CEO? And we've all, I'm sure everybody here has run a company, been a CEO, been a leader. You know what it's like to have somebody by your side who's a trusted advisor. So I definitely would say to do that. Okay. Any other comments about what Janet talked about? I thought there were a lot of really key points that she made about board service. Good speaker. Did you like her?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, very good. I'm just trying to find out some of the points. I took like a page or two of notes. So yeah, a lot of things that were valuable for me, like the board dynamics. And, I think the point we were just talking about, which is it's different being an executive than being on a board. It's much more collaborative. Let's see, the interview, how the interview and the perspective is different. It's the value you bring to the organization, not the personal talents that you have. The questions you should ask, I thought those were really good. Let's see.
It seems to be more relational. The whole board position, more relational. People have to feel like you fit. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, me too.
You mean from a hiring and a sort of hiring perspective, getting yeah.
Exactly. It's very
very
relational.
Yeah, well, here's what I always say to people. So we have a jobs board, right? And there's board positions up there, and there's companies that might approach you, but they're approaching you from absolutely freezing cold. So they don't know you, they don't know how you work. You've got a great track record, you've got the history, the skills, you've done it, right? But we don't really know if we're going to get along yet or not. And so if I trust you, Richard, and I've worked with you, and I can tell somebody, oh, no, if they think I'm a good guy and I say you're a good guy, then that's immediately your foot is in the door. So I feel like it's really a personality trust that people are recommending, not necessarily skills. You and I may or may not have worked together, but I can vouch for you. So I think it's a lot easier when someone can say, yes, I've worked with this person and I trust them.
That's what I like about the profile on In Touch, because you're starting to get those endorsements, and that's really the focus, is more is the relationship you've had with that person. And that's why I have Haley looking at my In Touch profile too, just make sure I've got that. And I still got more endorsements out there, but it's been really helpful, just, the feedback.
Yeah, that is really important. Oh, and number one, guys, I actually have our marketing team send an email out once every 2 months to people who haven't got an InTouch profile. So you might get an email that says, please put an InTouch profile up. Even if it's not the best profile and you're still waiting on your resume, it's good to have something up there because businesses are on our site all the time. My team are searching for people all the time. You need to have those keywords that people can just sort of grab and run with. So yeah, really important to do that. Okay, I think we're going to close up the rooms in just a second. So I'm going to leave, but I'm going to leave this room, but let me see. We might be closing it in about 30 seconds. So 1 second. See you guys.
And then they happen.
It is 10:30 now.
Okay, 10:30. All right. Well, thank you for staying up.
Us.
No. That's been great. I like. No, do you guys think it's been quite like a seamless interaction online? It still worked.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
We might need to mute people. So I've brought everybody back into the main room. How was your conversation, everybody? Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was good.
Good. Wonderful. Yeah, everybody's going to come diving back in. We may need to mute everyone if it's a little loud there. Good. Well, I think I managed to make the rooms work. That was a challenge, but I think we lost some people along the way. But hopefully you all had a good conversation together in your smaller groups.
Yeah, it was very productive.
Very good.
Wonderful. Well, so everybody who's been on this session today, we're going to share your names and Louise, are we able to share email addresses as well?
If that's okay with people that we have that signed up, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay. We'll share name and email, and then you can connect on LinkedIn, you can connect on InTouch, so that everyone can continue that conversation if you want to. Janelle, any final words?
Yes, I wanted to thank Janet so much for sharing her experiences with us. And I hope that you all see Janet as a role model of giving back. That as you are on boards of directors, that you in turn will also help other people as they are coming up through that journey that she made reference to help guide them in this world that's a little different than most other people who are in the everyday work world would understand. And I'm building a network of people of like experience or similar interests in this board realm, I think is very important. And I really appreciate InTouch's focus on this.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Janelle. Thank you very much for everybody for joining. We've had some great feedback from people on the session today. As you all know, we'll be doing more virtual events over the next month due to the circumstances. But I think in future, we will be doing obviously in-person events here in Chicago and in Ohio. Sorry, we couldn't make it this time around, but we will see you all again soon. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for us to connect. And if you'd ever like to reach out to me, you will have my email and contact information. But thank you all for joining and participating. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Janelle.
You bet. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Naomi.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.